some small figuring things out issues. So let's get this going, I guess. So this session we're going to be looking at Reactor. Reactor is the Mona interactive toolset that allows you to create animations on different events, such as looking at something, walking away from something, walking into something, and interacting with something. Reactor. So let me just confirm that I've got all of these things done. This is the first time I've worked with streaming on. Let me just confirm that the Mona channel. So we're just seeing what we can do with that. A few small issues, but we'll see how we go. So let's jump in. First thing we need to do is switch this over here for a second. Go there. No, that's not really what we want. We'll put that down there. Put that over here. See how that goes. That works. And let's jump in to our stream. So the first thing we need to do is go over the basics of Mona. And then we'll jump into some of the tools that we need to do that. So first up, go to docs.monaverse.com and down here to get started. Now we have a lot of resources that you can use to create your asset as needed. Get started covers all the basics if you're just learning. But then we'll also have create your space, which covers all of the basic elements of a space. For example, colliders, so you can don't run through everything, including the floor, and all of those. We also have the improve your space category, which are all optional, but they do make your space look and work and behave a lot better. So of course, like in a desktop space, you have a fair bit of, let's say, power, depending on your computer, of course. But if you're looking at VR or mobile, once those get added, it's a different game, I guess you could say. So keep that in mind as you're building. Down here we have optimize your space, so ways to improve your space to run faster. And then, of course, submitting your space in order to mint and therefore sell your space. So lots of resources on the docs. But today we just want the get started. And we'll sort of look at the reactor as well, just quickly. But first one we need to do is install Unity 2020.3.8 in F1. That's the version we're working with. We know it works with WebGL as we need it, so we've got that. The next thing we need to do is download the Mona template. So if we just click on that, go to this, and then go to code, download zip, save, and then I keep this on my desktop forever because I use it a lot. So I've got that. So that's it for the template. And then we open the template in Unity. So let's look at that, shall we? So I'm going to create a new folder for today's workshop. So this one is the Reactor Basics. Blech. There we go. Put that there. And then we can right mouse click here and just go drag and drop. So I go extract here. That'll work. And this is the project file for your project. So I will usually name this. I'll usually, this is just me. I'll put a number in the front. Then the name of the folder. That way, it's very easy to save and back up. So as soon as I go Control C, Control V, I will be creating a backup of this particular project. So super easy to do that. When you double click, you should have those there. So let's jump into Unity. And then we go open to our this one. So once again, get to this point, so the VS Code, assets, packages, and project settings, and then just go open. And that will open it. Now, the first open will take a little while because it's setting up a few files and folders and all that sort of stuff. After that, it's a fair bit quicker on second open. So keep that in mind. So here I have Unity. If you haven't opened Unity before, it can be slightly terrifying. It might look exactly like this. This is how I've set up mine. So you may not have like animation and animator down here, things like that. But basically most of the magic happens here. This is where you put all your objects. This is where you get all your objects. This is where you animate all your objects. This is where you... how do you describe animator? This is where you have access to all your animations. Now these two things are very important for Reactor, so we'll be getting to them very soon. We have our inspector, so if you click on anything, you'll have all the details here. And that's kind of it, really. Like, you'll have lighting as well if you want to do light mapping, which is good for high quality lighting that is not as expensive as real-time lights. So light mapping is super useful. Once again, most of these things are covered in the docs, so have at it. Now, once you've opened up the template, first we need to open up our space scenes. So we go to Mona, load space scenes, then we have that. Then over here we have the untitled scene, which we need to remove. So right mouse click on untitled and go remove scene. And there we go. We have our template. Now, if I wanted to, I could and will, just to show you because it's cool, press playground up the top here. And that will automatically load a Explorer folder and a browser. So Explorer folder right here, and then we have our playground. So if we just drag that onto that, we have a character that I'm working on, and our template space. And we can run around and do all sorts of things. Yeah, very. This is just a test to see if giraffes work in Mona. So yeah. Okay. Now, one thing I recommend doing is basically delete the playground files. So there are two ways to make sure that your the playground files update when you press that playground button. One is to save before doing it. The other one is to delete the playground files. Just to confirm, I do it all the time. I do both. So there's that. Okay. Now, a quick summary of our space. The YouTube, not the YouTube, the Mona space will be made up of 3 scenes. So we got a space, a portals, and an artifacts. And each of these scenes has, let's say, a parent object that needs to be a parent of everything else. So the space scene, and this also has a space tag, portals, which has a portal layer tag, and artifacts, which has an artifact layer tag. All of your assets in the space will be under each of these. So your portals, which allow you to go to other minted spaces, will look like this. I could have more than one portal if I wanted to, like so. Now, there are very specific conditions for the portals, so naming and file format. But the most important one is each one of these ones has to have a unique name. So that would be okay. If it wasn't, though, we can use the QA tool up here, and it will tell you that you have an issue because duplicate names. So, useful tool. That's that. That said, we don't want portals. We just want the one. Most of your magic happens under space. So you have a spawn point, which is where your character will spawn. Make sure that it is blue. If it is red, that means it is over an asset with a collider. Or if it is not over a floor, has nowhere to land, it will fall forever, and your players will not have a great time. After that, it's completely up to you. So my folder structure, I will usually put my lights in a folder or a game object. Assets will be sort of in here, and that just keeps things organized for me. So that's a very super quick summary of a Mona space. Now, today we're going to be focusing on Reactor. Now, Reactor is the tool to create interactive experiences in a Mona space. Custom scripts are not supported at the moment because of the security risks that are involved in having WebGL, like C# in WebGL and things like that. So basically, Reactor allows you to control the animator tool. So we'll go into that in a second. And for this session, we're going to be basically looking at... I don't like red. There we go. At this session, we're going to be basically looking at sort of like a simple door that opens. And we can do that with just a cube in the space to keep it really simple. So let's do that. So I'm going to create an empty game object. We'll call this door. So in this case, an empty object is just kind of like a folder. In this case, there's a simple way to look at it. That folder has a transform and a position in the world, but that's fine. And let's add a cube using control to snap, just to make it line up a bit more. Now I'm going to keep it there. I'm going to keep it on the spawn point, which is red, because... Actually, I'm going to move this one, and then it's not red. So there we go. That's better. Now, let's scale the cube to something like a door, which would be 1.5? 2. Yeah, that'll do. 0.1? Nope, that's 2.5. Yep, that works. And 0.1 for a door. Is that the right size? Bit big. Let's go 2. Yeah, that's better. Cool. So when it comes to positions of objects, a lot of it comes down to pivots. So that one's at 111. That's position is not at 111. So I'm going to move that to 110. Now the 0 is fine. Yep, that's actually better. Ah, yeah, that's what we want. So when it comes to animation, pivots are very important in Unity. So you can control pivots that little bit more by creating empty game objects and then putting assets in that. So in this case, we want our position here to sort of be there, so that's fine. But we want this one to be 0, 0, 0. That said, I do want this to go up to there, so that's okay. That way, the door controls the position of the asset completely. And then we can do things like this. Now, the cube's rotation, if I rotate it, so I'm going to put this to pivot and to local, is in the middle, which we don't actually want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an empty and put this as door pivot. That. Then I'm going to put the door in that and then move it to the middle. And hopefully, yeah, it's a little bit off. So that's 1.2. So this would be probably minus 0.6. Let's do that. Pivot's there. So with rotation on the pivot and the local, we basically have a door. And once again, this is controlling everything in Unity. If I was creating this in Blender, 3D Studio Max, Maya, like you name it, I would control where the pivot is on the asset. So let's do a quick example. I'll keep the default because we need that. So let's do the same. Scale 1.2. Nope. 0.1. 1.2. Yeah. And what was it? 2? 1.5, maybe. What were anything? 1.2, 2, and 0.1. 1 point. There we go. Okay. So this dot here is the pivot, which we don't really want. So we want to press G to push this up, and then maybe across. So that's there. And then we go Control A, and then do, I usually do all transforms, and you'll note that the dot goes down there. So if we go local, and then press R, you'll have that. Now, if you export that as an FBX, that is the rotation. So there's many different ways to do many different things in the metaverse. But for today, we're just going to focus on this one, just to show that you can actually do some pretty cool things in Unity alone. So we have our object. So let's just call this door asset. We'll do that. But the one we want to play with is this or this. Now, when I say play with, we need this to rotate as a door, which needs an animation. So let's go into Reactor a little bit. How can I describe this? How can I best describe this? Let's pull up Photoshop. Let's do this. So, what happens with an animator is if I create an animation or more than one animation on the asset, I can then control that animation with Reactor. So Reactor isn't actually the ecosystem that does all of the things. Most of it is controlling Animator. So the best way to do that is by creating some animations and showing you. So let's have a look at that. So we have our assets. I'm going to put this on the door pivot. Now, when you create an animator and animation clip using the automatic approach here, what that means is everything on and under this asset, so all its children, and this asset can be animated. So if I put it on this one, I cannot animate this door here. I can animate this or this, which is what I'd like to do. So let's do that. So click on that. If you don't see the animation and animator windows, you can go to Window, Animation, Animation, and Animator. You'll need them both. Go to the asset you want to put the animator on, and then go Create. Put it under Animation, and go Door. Now, the first animation that you create is, usually my go-to is the idle animation. So in this case, we're going to have a closed door. Or, yeah, let's do that. Closed. Then go Save. And then you have the normal approach to doors here in an animation. Now, if I wanted to, just to create one, I usually select the record button and then do something. Once again, holding Control to snap, which is really useful, to create that keyframe of the animation. Now, with doors, you don't have to actually animate the turning part because Unity Animator can do some really cool stuff with that. So if you have a still animated asset, you can just do that one frame and Unity will transition or blend between those two. So in our case, for our door, simple door, there's more complicated ones, but our simple door, you can basically create a door closed and a door open, and it will blend between those two. So I'm going to do that once again, super simple. So we've done our door, and we need a second animation. So you click on the animation here and just go Create New Clip. So let's record, and then do, yeah, that works. So we have our two open, and if you click on it and don't move this, it won't change. It's annoying, but that's how it works. So keep that in mind. All right, so we have our two animations. So that's the first stage. The second stage is to go into Animator, and this is actually where the magic happens. So I'm going to make it big. It's pretty important. So left mouse click, drag them around, make it as neat as you want. I've got that. Now, I don't use layers. You can. It just layers animation types, but I very rarely use it, so I won't worry about it so much. Click on parameters, though, because we do need that. So let's have a look. The orange node is the default animation that will happen when you start the stage or start the scene. So in our case, we want the door closed to be the default state. So when I open the space, all the doors are closed because that's the way to go. These ones and all of the other ones, if you have more, are your other animations. Note how the name is the same as the file name that we used. So what we want to do is create a connection between these two to trigger animations. And that's what Reactor will do. So let's do this. Right mouse click on door closed, make transition, and click on the door open. We also want it to close afterwards, so same again. Right mouse click, make transition to door closed. So these arrows are basically how we're going to control the animator. When you click on an arrow, you have all of these tools over here, which allows us even more control over how this transition happens. So, first up, we have has exit time. Has exit time is an interesting and very useful tool for you can only trigger this animation at the end of the exit time. Usually for something like a door, you want it to trigger as soon as you do it. So for most of my animations, or simple animations, I will turn that off. So if it's on, it will just go, and then once it finishes, goes to the next, and then goes up. But we want to do this when we want it to. So I'm going to turn that off. Now, I'll give you a warning saying nothing's going to ever happen. So we need a condition for animator to check if or when to change the animation. And that's what parameters are for. So let's go over here. Once again, parameters. And then go Boolean. So Boolean is like a true or false. So let's go open door. Now, at the moment, this is very important. I use sort of like programming variable type names, but you can use sort of whatever you want as long as it's correct. So, like case is important, spelling is important. So come up with the standard and then stick to that. So we have a boolean that is open door, and now I can put that in here. So already knows that we have one. So you can pull down here if you have more than one, and then you go true or false. So if the door is true, open it. And if the door is false, close it. Now this is what Reactor is going to trigger. So the Reactor component, or what we make in the Reactor tool, is going to tell animator open door is now true, so it will open the door. If you leave a collider, the Reactor will send open door is false, and therefore it will close the door. So a lot of Reactor comes down to controlling arrows. That's it. Now, of course, this could be super complicated. We've had some people build some crazy reactors, like 20, 30 nodes. But luckily, doors are 2. So we've got that. Okay. So these are the 2 triggers. Now, I was talking about how you can blend between 2 animations with Reactor, and that's what this is for. So if I want to, I can actually slow down the door quite a bit. So it will take that long, and you can actually see the results down here if I want to. So it will take, well, that long to open. Whereas if I do this one, it's much shorter. It will be very, very, very quick. So I kind of like that. Actually, I might maybe that there. So that will happen as soon as I trigger this animation, and then that will happen as soon as I trigger this animation, and that's what we want. Okay, so that's animator. And we have our animation here. So as you can see, we have animator. Component, the animator component, which is what we're looking at here. Now, the next thing we need to do is create the Reactor component and a collider component to check where to trigger. So I'm going to put these kind of in its own game object. So my approach, you can name it whatever you like, but my approach is R for Reactor. just door. And then on that, I'm going to add reactor. So if you type in just react, so I go Mona reactor component. So that's that. And we also, while I'm at it, we'll put a box collider. So these are the two things you need for reactor to work. The collider is what reactor looks at when trying to figure out the event. So at the moment, we have quite a few different types of events. The main ones today we're going to focus on is on enter trigger, on exit trigger. We could also do a non-player interact. And if we get time, we'll look at on-player look start and on-player look end. Like, these are all the events that you have access to. And you can do a lot of cool stuff with it. So let's start with on enter trigger. So when I enter this collider, so let's make this collider a little bit more what we want. So let's go there. Make it pretty big. What opens. Up here, I'm also going to reduce the size of the icons. Actually, I'm just going to press that and turn them off. So it's very easy. So yeah, if you want to get rid of gizmos, just to clear up some of the viewport, you can just click on that or pull down and then adjust the size of your icons. Put that up there to there. Excellent. So when I walk into this collider, Reactor is going to send the message to the animator to open the door, which is what we want. So on enter trigger, do a plus element down. The name is your name. Call it what you like. So element 0 looks cooler. So open door. As you can see, that's the only thing it changes. So the name is what you want it. Operation is set. So that's what we want. We're going to set the animator to true, but you have a lot of options which come out making really cool stuff. So I can add 1 to integer or a whole number every time I walk into the box. I can subtract 1. I can times it by 5. I can divide it by 3, and I can invert. So invert would say 1 would go -1, -1 would go 1. But invert is super useful for true and false. So every time I walk into this door, I switch whatever case it is. So there's lots of different approaches to these, but the most common one, of course, is set. Now this object is the one with the animator on it. So I'm going to double check. So door pivot has animator. So I'm going to drag that into there. Parameter. Now this once again has to be case sensitive and correct. This is a very common mistake that a lot of people get. We will hopefully be able to fix this up and make it easier. But always make sure by comparing down to your animator that you have the right value. So that's good. In type, this is a Boolean, so the true or false. And then we want this to go to true with a lowercase t. Now, the last option there is local. Local is very useful in regards to creating a reactor that only applies to the person triggering it. So if I put that on and I walk into it, the door will open for me, but no one else. That said, it will also look like I'm walking through a door to everybody else. So it's super useful for different things. So say if you're doing some camera stuff, which is one use case where you can put a camera in a space, make sure it's disabled at the start unless you know what you're doing, and then like do a cutscene or something like that. So there's a lot of interesting stuff you can do with local, but in this case we want the door to open for everyone. So that's that. Okay. Next up, we want to add and on exit. So it closes the door. So exit, nope, close door. Set, once again, door pivot, because that has the animator on it. Open door. Now, even though this is closing the door, I have to use the right parameter. So make sure that the parameter is the one you're meant to be triggering, not the logic that you would like to apply. So there's that. And this one is false. F-A-L-S-E, yep. Once again, this is another common issue where you might spell true or false incorrectly. So yeah, check that as well. Okay, so that's our setup. Now, usually I will always do a double check on all of the assets to make sure that it works. Logically before even testing it. So as an example, I would go to door pivot, go to the animator, check the open door with a capital D, do this, open door true, do this, open door false, has exit time is off on both. And then we're good. Okay. File save. Playground. I can't change my giraffe, so we're stuck with the giraffe for a bit. Okay, so we have our fantastic door. This is the best door you will ever see in your life. But when you open it, he's too tall. And then when you leave it, it closes. Open it. And this is the interesting thing is when you have a one-sided door, you have that door issue where the door will push you away. Now there are of course ways to do that, to fix that, and we'll look at that. So we have our first reactor. Well done. Next up. So next up, let's make that door an interactive one. So I'm going to remove these. So minus, click, minus, and let's put it on player interact. So this case, we have to change our collider, which we can't see. We have to change our collider because with on interact, that means that I need to see the object, or Mona needs to see it. So when I put that little white dot over it, it knows that I'm meant to interact with it. So let's do that. So we have our door. Put that down. Okay. So let's get rid of our on enter trigger and on exit trigger, and we want our on player interact. Yeah, let's just do open door. Make it up as we go along. Now, let's see. Let's do an invert. Let's give this one a shot. Once again, door asset, door, open door. Nearly broke it. Cool. Value type, Boolean. Now, even though this is invert and it will switch, you kind of have to put something in here for now. So I'm just going to put true. It doesn't actually matter, but something needs to go in there. True or false is recommended. Now we want the UI text prompt to, let's say, open. Nah, just open. That's it. Done. All done. Cool. Play. Now notice here, because this is very interesting, how that doesn't show. And there it does. Now, the reason for that is because the door has a collider, and the front of the door collider is, or my collider for the door, is behind that. So, collider order is very important in Mono. This applies to things like portals and canvases, artifacts, where if the collider is behind another collider, it won't work. You won't see it. So make sure that your colliders don't override other colliders that are needed to be seen. So, as an example, I'm gonna pull this one apart and fix that. So, there's two approaches to it. One is I actually get rid of the door collider here, and that way my collider is the only one that applies. So that's one approach. Um, so I would maybe just remove this one. Do I want to do that? I think I want to do that. Or I could just turn it off. And let's see if that works. Ooh, what's going on there? All right, let's try a different approach. This one. So as you can see, like it's really fine. Do this there. So as you can see that the line is behind the door. So I'm actually just going to make it bigger. Just a little bit. To make sure that it is in front of the other one. Go back to shading. And that should work. Much better. So yeah, that's kind of what we want. Um, so when I press E, why doesn't that work? That should work. Okay, we're gonna have to check that one. Troubleshooting. Very common part of the reactor process, just because that's how it's done. So let's have a look. Hmm. Put that back on. Door is true. Door is false. Is this going to be one of those things where everybody watching the stream is telling me, why don't I just do that? Or that should work. um, let's try set and see if that does anything. Yeah, let's try that. Not sure about that one. I will have to look into that. Once again, could be me, could be something simple. But I have a theory that invert may not be working. Or no, not even. on player interact. So I'll look into that. Should work in theory. That's that. The other one is, of course, player look at, and let's start. Let's do that one. Once again, open door, set, door pivot, open door, boolean to true, and then close door. Boolean false. Done. Yeah, let's make this one a bit bigger though again, because it's a bit. Just as a test, that should work. All right. Hopefully this one works. Yeah. So let's look at, look away. That one's cool. All right. So that's your basics of Reactor. Um, all of it, to be honest. So well done. You've passed the first grade. Um, Now I'll have to look into the on interact. Usually it'll work. So that's the thing. So next up, let's look at the door element. That if you had the moving door, I'll start again. When you walk towards a door, you want the door to open away from you. Otherwise, you get that sort of pushing thing. So if the door opens your way, you'll get pushed out of the way, which is not ideal. So a better version of a door is being able to open both ways. So for that, we need more animations. So let's do that. So we have our door closed and our door open. I'm going to rename this one to door out with correct spelling. What? So notice that like I like how Unity connects everything. So if I rename this here, it'll change this. That's actually really good. And the other one we need is door in. Now I do highly recommend naming these correctly and in a way that makes sense to you, because the reactor starts getting quite complicated with what's controlling what. So just a heads up on that. We want this one. Then control, and then go in. So that way. So we've got door closed, door in, that, and door out. Like that, which is what we want. Excellent. Going to animator, we have these. Now this doesn't update though, so I'm going to rename this one. Can I rename this one? Yeah. Yep. Not everything gets renamed instantly. So there's that. So in this case, what we're going to need is kind of as many approaches. I could use numbers, so stage like 0, 1, and 2. But in this case, I'm just going to do door out is true. And another one, which is door in is true. So this one's door out is true. That goes out. Door out is false. Good. That off. Door in is true. Door in is false. Okay. Once again, let's make it a little bit more something. And then out's fine. Yeah. Okay. So that's our animator ecosystem. So once again, like the animator is where you need to control what's going on. Reactor is just telling that what to do. So animator is where the magic happens. Reactor is just telling the magic how to happen. So there's that. Okay. So let's get rid of these. And let's look at our reactors. Now, let's have a look. So we need a reactor that is in front of the door. So it opens. There we go. So we need a collider that triggers the door out. And the one that sort of triggers the in. But then we need one that closes the door. So we actually need 3 reactors in this case. So let's do some naming here. So if I walk in here, I want it to go out. Let's make it a little bigger. There we go. So if I walk in, push it away. We need another one. And this is door in. I didn't actually do the trigger. So let's do that, shall we? So door out. So on enter, door out, set door pivot. What was it? Door. Once again, always check if your parameter is correct. So door out. Yep. Boolean to true. Done. That's it. Now we don't need an exit trigger on this one. We don't want it. We just want this to open on that. Then I'm going to delete that one and duplicate that because it has some of it done. So the only thing we need to do here is change some of the smaller things. So door out, door in. That's it. Then we also need to move the collider to the other side of the door. So selecting this to edit your colliders. Go. Done. So walk in that, go away. Now, the last one we need to do is kind of like a closed door thing. So we're actually going to do duplicate again. Just go door close. Now, in this one, we actually don't want it on an enter. So I'm going to actually get rid of that one. Click on it, minus. And then on exit, we close both, which we can do. It's very easy. So close out. Set door pivot. And we actually want to do both. So once again, check your parameters, set Boolean to false. Check the spelling of that. And also, once again, now we'll copy everything of the last one, so that actually saves a bit of time. So close in, door pivot, door in, Boolean to false. And we want this to happen when we leave the area. So let's make it a bit bigger, maybe. Leave it. The door closes. Okay. So, once again, summary. If I enter this one, push it to that way. If I enter this one, push it to that way. And if I leave this box with these two, close both. Door in, door out. Fingers crossed. Go. So if we walk this way, it opens. So that's good. And then closes. If we walk this way, it opens and closes. So that's a much better door, apart from the fact that giraffe is taller than that. So we got that. So yeah, that's a more complicated door. Now, because we used a Unity cube for our door, it's a bit more difficult to just copy it over from Blender. So say we want to make a nice door and put it into this space, we would, well, let's have a quick look at that, because that's an interesting point. This one. So what I could do is just delete that door and put the asset, because all of the animation was done on this particular asset. So there's no animation on this at all. So I could just put one in there. So let's do that, because I want a nicer door. So let's make a nice door. We make nice doors. Let's grab screwed along normals. So cool. And then let's make a door handle, I guess. Control D, scale X, no, scale Y, SY. That looks good. GX, that way. E to do that. Yeah. Control R for edge loops. Scale SZ for a bit of that. That one and that one is what I want. Yep. E again for about that. So as you can see, I'm using a lot of hotkeys because speed. And then go bridge, edge loops. Done. Turn on X-ray up here so we can go. I should learn the X-ray hotkey. I don't have that one, which is ridiculous. Now I'm gonna give it. It has a material, so that's good. Gray. That works. It's a door. Where's up? There we go. Okay, cool. So now we have that. Just going to do Control A because I did some stuff and I get into the habit of that because you want this in the transform, like the arrow or N, I think that does it as well. You want these to be 1, 1, 1 because otherwise the scale in Unity gets a bit messy, especially with light mapping and all that sort of stuff. If and when you get to that. Now, to make these 1 is Control A. So you basically apply all the transforms, or in particular scale. So that's kind of an important thing, so you don't mess up, or your assets aren't messed up. More the point. When you get to Unity, the wrong way. There we go. So I'm just putting these into my models folder. Door 1. And then just go selected objects if you have other assets and stuff like that. So it's very common for me to do that. If I'm not using rigs or animation, I will apply transform here as well, just to reduce the chances of mistakes or issues happening with the transform there. So that's definitely something I do. But it does even come up with a warning where when it comes up, there we go. There's an experimental use at own risk unknown broken with armature, which is rigs and skeletons and animations. So if you're not doing any of those things, I'll put that on as well, just to improve my chances of a 100% 1-to-1 scale in Unity. So as you can see, we got our door 1. So I'm going to put that in my door pivot, like so. I'm going to line that up. Now notice how the pivot, when it's on local, is kind of where I want it to be. But because I'm doing the door asset, so getting rid of that, it's done. So if I look at my animation, let's just do this. You can actually see the new door. There's that. Now the thing is, this door does not have a collider. So let's quickly put one on. So box collider. Now that includes the door handle, which we don't want. So I'm just going to edit that a little bit. So, and therefore we have a pretty door. And the thing is, every time we update that door now, especially if we keep the pivot in the same place, that will update. So that's pretty cool. Done. So let's test that one. So notice how it's animated, even though we didn't animate that door. Like we just imported it and put it in. So it's a really good way to sort of look at your Unity ecosystem and the things you animate, because the things you animate are only the things you animate, and not its children and things like that. So you can actually utilize that in interesting ways to be able to update your scene as needed. So we've got that. Cool. All right. Do we continue or do we end the basics there? Because that's the basics, really. A simple door, and all of the tools, except for on interact. The only difference with the on interact that we did would be it worked, so I have to double check why that wasn't, if it's me or if there's a bug at the moment we can fix. So looking at that, other things could be an elevator, but that's basically a door that just goes up and down. To the point that if you're doing a sci-fi door that goes up and down, that is exactly what it is. So you could do elevators with what we've done today. You could do kind of like a, well, let's look. There's actually hang on. Actually, this is in docs, so let's just go there. Mona Library, no, General Resources, Mona Playground. So if you go to the Mona Playground, this has a few examples of basic things. Now you can actually download this asset and pull apart those reactors if you wanted to. We're going to get my avatar back to normal. Moment. So the playground has all the things, basically. So we have a bunch of tutorials. We have some different approaches to canvases and artifacts, light mapping. Um, like we kind of really do have everything in here. I do actually have to add to this because we've added a few things since. My favorite is, of course, the the jumping castle. And this is done with Reactor as well. So if you look at, like, there are 4 examples, and it doesn't work as well when you just walk around it. But there are 4 reactors in here that will play an animation on jumping castle that uses blend shapes to blend the elements here, sort of thing. So when you jump on it, it it's cool. So that's that. We have other things here where, say, for example, we have a PPV, um, but the reactor here is when you jump on it, it goes down. For example, um, those are not reactor. These are reactor though. So doors, for example. So this is a two-way door, similar to what we just did before. However, this one is a one-way door, and sort of shows the problem with one-way doors. Great for this way though. This blue is just an animated one. This elevator, if I go onto it, it will go across and then stop, but then go back when I go off. So there's that one. I believe this one will go in, and then when I go on it again, it will invert to the other direction. And same with these as well. So when I go off, it'll go back to the base state. Then you have invert as well. So every time I go into it, it will change whichever state it's on. So with the tools that I taught today in the last hour, basically you could make all of these things pretty easily. So there's that. Yeah. All right. I feel this is a good time or a good point to stop. What I'll be doing next workshop is something more complicated. So, looking at, well, I don't know, I might get some builder suggestions in regards to cool reactor experiences to build. And then we'll start getting more and more complicated over the next 2 or 3, maybe even 4 weeks, and see what we can do. I have some things of wanting to jump into like a shooting gallery using interact. So basically, you interact with an asset which would basically kind of behave like a shooting gallery. So I think that'd be really cool. So there's lots of cool stuff you could do. Scoob, I think, was the winner of the Interact Challenge, which created, yeah, it was Interact Space, I think it was. We did the whole puzzle thing, and like he taught me how to do it, and I still don't know how he did it. Like the logic behind the process was insane. But check that one out as well. So yeah, lots of good stuff you can do with Reactor. All right, let's wrap it up there. We'll call it a day, and thanks for joining. Have a good day.